The Chicago Bears just finished a season that makes the rest of the NFC very nervous. And somehow it still feels like the real story has not even started yet. They went 11-6, took the NFC North, then beat the Green Bay Packers 31-27 in a wild card classic before falling 20-17 in overtime to the Los Angeles Rams. That two-game playoff run showed a team that finally broke its mental wall, came back in games where they trailed late, and refused to fold, even when the season hung by a thread. 7 wins, where they were behind in the last 2 minutes, is the kind of thing you almost never see. It looked chaotic from the outside, but inside, it proved something simple. This group does not panic anymore. On offense, this was not the old joke about Chicago needing only a field goal and a prayer. This was a real modern attack that every advanced table lined up as a top 10 unit in overall efficiency, with strong success rate and explosive plays in both the pass and the run. At the center of it all was Caleb Williams, turning broken pockets into highlight throws in a way that usually gets compared to Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. The difference now is that he finally has help. Young wideouts like Rome Odunze and Luther Burden, plus tight end Colston Loveland, gave him answers all over the field instead of forcing him to play hero on every snap. Drives did not live or die on one star anymore. The ball moved, the chains moved, and for the first time in a long time, Chicago could win shootouts on purpose, not by accident. The problem is the part nobody in that building can ignore. While the offense was climbing, the defense was leaking on the ground at a scary rate, giving up more than 2,200 rushing yards and over 5 yards a carry, and putting way too much stress on every other snap. You could still see real pillars like Montez Sweat off the edge and Tremaine Edmonds cleaning up in the middle, and the secondary made clutch plays. But the structure of the front was not good enough for a team that wants to play deep into January. That is why this offseason feels so dangerous in a good way. Chicago already has an offense that looks like a contender core, and as we go deeper, we are going to break down why that side of the ball is basically ready right now, and how that shifts all the real pressure onto the defensive rebuild and the moves the front office makes next. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Bears and all the NFL content. Can we hit 500 likes on this video? The Chicago Bears offense did something last season that their own history almost refuses to believe. For the first time in a long time, they did not feel like passengers praying the defense would drag them to the finish line. They finished in the upper group of the league in efficiency, staying on schedule on early downs and stringing together long scoring drives instead of living on broken plays and luck. When you watch them week after week, you could feel that every call had an answer built in. If the run got stuffed, the quick game was ready. If the safeties cheated down, the deep shot came out. That is the kind of structure that separates a fun year from a true offensive core you can trust for seasons. At the center of that core is Caleb Williams, and the biggest shift was not just his highlight plays, it was how many people helped carry the load around him. You had Rome Odunze stretching the field and turning routine sideline routes into chunk gains, Luther Burden working underneath and in the slot as a physical run after catch problem, and Colston Loveland becoming the safety valve who could also split the seam and punish single coverage. Add DJ Moore still drawing top corners and attention, plus DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai giving you different styles in the backfield, and suddenly, defenses could not just key on one name. The production spread out in a healthy way, which is exactly what the team's own breakdowns kept showing. Drives stayed alive because someone new stepped up on each big snap. Yeah, not because one star had to play hero over and over. The scary part for the rest of the league is that this offense still has room to grow without needing a complete overhaul. Caleb Williams can cut down on the aggressive throws that turn into avoidable mistakes simply by playing in the same system for another year with the same main weapons. Timing with Rome, Odunze, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, and Kyle Moonangai only gets sharper with more reps, and the playbook can open even wider once everyone has full command of the details. That is why the front office can walk into this offseason knowing the attack is already built like a contender core. The real pressure now shifts to the other side of the ball, where the numbers are not nearly as pretty and where the next decisions will decide whether this team stays fun or becomes flat out terrifying. For all the fun on offense, every Sunday, there was this quiet fear on the other side of the ball. When teams lined up against the Chicago Bears, they stopped trying to win track meets and instead just handed the ball off and watched the chains move. Opponents stayed in second and short, third and manageable, and drove the length of the field without ever needing a hero throw. That is the part that hurt the most. The defense did not fall apart because of one awful position group, it sagged. Because the middle of the field kept getting pushed backward, snap after snap. You could feel that the Bears were trying to survive early downs instead of attacking them. And by the time third down arrived, the call sheet felt smaller and more desperate. What makes this unit so strange is that it still has real stars. Montez Sweat kept winning on the edge and finishing plays in the backfield. Tremaine Edmonds piled up tackles and held the huddle together when everything in front of him softened. On the back end, players like Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Kevin Byard, and Jaquan Brisker jumped routes, punched out the ball, and stole drives that should have ended in points. You saw stretches where this group looked like a classic Bears defense, flying around and flipping games with takeaways. Then, in the very next quarter, a simple inside run would go for another easy first down, and all that momentum would vanish. It was like watching a house with expensive windows and a broken foundation. That is why nobody in the building is pretending this is a small tweak situation. The Bears do not just need another clever blitz package or one more veteran corner. They need to rebuild the front in a way that finally lets those playmakers work from a position of strength. The good news is that the timing lines up. The roster finally has an offensive core that can win right now, which means every resource on the table can be aimed at fixing this one flaw. The real question is how aggressive the front office is willing to be, because the path they choose with contracts, restructures, and cap space will decide whether this defense stays fragile or turns into the engine of a real title run. The crazy part about the Chicago Bears situation is that they look trapped on paper, but they are not really trapped at all. The cap sheet says they are squeezed, close to the limit, with big price tags attached to core players and a defense that still needs help. That sounds like a problem until you remember how much of the modern cap is just timing. It is not only about who you pay, it is about when you pay them. Chicago is in that rare spot where they can shift the timing without tearing out the heart of the roster. That is the quiet win nobody talks about. They can be aggressive without waking up to a fire sale. You look at the contracts and you start to see levers instead of walls. A smart restructure for someone like DJ Moore can free serious room in the short term while still keeping him as a key target for Caleb Williams. Deals for veterans such as Montez Sweat, Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Jalen Johnson, and Kyler Gordon all have space to move money into future years where the books are cleaner. In some cases, you are not even guessing on an aging star. You are simply sliding payments for players who are still right in their prime. That is how you turn a cap sheet that looks tight in one season into one that suddenly has room for a real move, maybe even two, without saying goodbye to the guys who just helped you win 11 games. Of course, there is a line you do not cross. You do not want to stack so much future money on players like Tremaine Edmonds or Gervon Dexter that it becomes hard to pivot if the fit is not perfect. And you do not want to live every year borrowing from the next one. But right now, the Bears are far from that danger zone. They can clear a big chunk of space by touching only the deals they truly believe in, and then use that fresh room to do more than just patch holes. That is where things get interesting, because once you realize you can protect your core and still open the checkbook, the question shifts from, can they afford anything, to what upgrade would actually change this offense or defense right now? And that is exactly where the next twist in this story shows up around the backfield. Nobody expected the Chicago Bears to even think about changing their backfield after the way this offense moved the ball, but that is exactly where the quiet smoke is starting to rise. The idea on the table is simple and bold at the same time. You already have DeAndre Swift, who knows the system and just put together one of his best seasons. Now picture waking up and hearing that the front office is seriously looking at a player like Breece Hall. That is not a small tweak. That is a move that tells the whole league you are not just happy with a good offense. You want something that keeps defensive coordinators up at night. The reason Breece Hall even enters this conversation is because he checks boxes that go beyond what DeAndre Swift already gives you. Swift is quick, smooth, and dangerous in space, but Hall brings that plus more size, more power, through contact and real three-down workhorse traits. He has already proved he can carry an attack on a team that did not always help him with clean boxes or explosive passing threats. Put that same skill set next to Caleb Williams with Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, and DJ Moore stretching the field, and suddenly every run fake feels heavier. Defenses cannot sit on outside runs or swings anymore, because one missed tackle on Hall turns into a long gain, and he is good enough as a receiver to punish any linebacker that is half a step late. Names like Kenneth Walker will always get thrown around when people talk about the top of the running back market, but Hall is the one that fits this exact moment for Chicago. What makes this twist even more dangerous for the rest of the conference is how it ties back to that cap flexibility the Bears quietly built. Because they can move money on deals for veterans they truly believe in, they have the option to keep DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai and stay steady, or they can chase Breece Hall, but clear room by shifting numbers and turn a strength into something close to unfair. Either path leaves Caleb Williams in a good spot, but only one has the chance to turn this offense into the kind that erases bad drives with one snap. And here is where the story really starts to tilt. Because if the Bears are willing to be that aggressive at a position that is already solid, imagine what happens when that same mindset and that same financial freedom is pointed straight at the trade market and the defensive stars other teams might be willing to move. The Chicago Bears might be walking into the wildest trade storm this league has seen in years, and they are one of the few teams actually built to use it. Around the NFL, front offices are quietly saying the same thing. This free agent class does not feel special. This draft does not feel very deep. And when that happens, desperate teams stop dreaming about picks and start asking about proven stars. That is the world the Bears are stepping into right now. A world where one phone call can do more for a defense than 2 full off-seasons of careful rebuilding. A world where a single move could turn a fun 11-win team into the kind of roster that scares people in January. When a voice like Adam Schefter says to expect more trades, you pay attention because it lines up perfectly with how Ryan Poles already behaves as a general manager. He has never been shy about moving pieces. He moved off big names. He flipped draft positions. He traded for help, like Montez Sweat, Keenan Allen, and Joe Thuney when the price made sense. Now picture that same aggressive mindset in a year where names such as Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, Jeffrey Simmons, Chris Jones, Kenny Clark, or DeForest Buckner might become available if their teams decide they cannot pay everyone. Add in the talk about changing the rules, so clubs can trade picks from 5 different drafts instead of only 3. And you suddenly get a league where an owner can say yes to a deal that once sounded impossible. In that kind of market, a team with a young quarterback like Caleb Williams in a stable offensive core is dangerous because it can afford to spend heavy capital on the right defensive monster. The scary part for everyone else is that Chicago does not have to force anything. They can let the league's panic come to them, wait for one of those top defenders to shake loose, and then decide if the price is worth stepping in. If the Raiders choose to listen on Max Crosby, If another front office quietly shops a player like Jeffrey Simmons or Chris Jones, the Bears have both the draft picks and the cap tools to stand in that line. But here's the twist that makes their situation different from a normal trade chase. Even if no blockbuster deal ever lands, they already have a mock draft on the table that hits their weakest area with 3 straight trench pieces. So while the rest of the conference watches the trade rumors scroll by, Chicago might be quietly building something even more dangerous through the draft. And that is where the double dose of good news really shows itself. This mock draft gives the Chicago Bears exactly what they needed up front, dropping Caton McDonald in the middle as a space-eating rookie run stopper, adding Derek Moore as a high motor edge with 10 sacks in college, and Dennis Sutton as a tough base end who helps against the run, turning a soft defensive front into a young, physical unit that lets Tremaine Edmunds and the secondary play faster, while all 3 stay cheap on rookie deals, so the Bears can keep Caleb Williams and the offense intact and still have cap room for a big defensive move. The Chicago Bears blueprint is simple. Their offense is already set with Caleb Williams leading a core of Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, and Kyle Monangai, behind an improved line with Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, while the mock draft drops Caton McDonald, Derek Moore, and Dennis Sutton into a front that already has Montez Sweat, Jervon Dexter, Shamar Turner, and Tremaine Edmunds, backed by Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Kevin Byard, and Jaquan Brisker. All on or near rookie deals with enough cap and trade flexibility to still chase a star like Max Crosby or Jeffrey Simmons, turning last year's fun playoff run into the starting point of a long NFC problem.